Hi everyone, welcome to this webinar about the new survey tool. I'm Stina, I'm the Product Communications Manager in It's Learning, but I will not be presenting today. We have someone far more competent in the survey tool than me for this. We are experiencing some problems with the camera today, so I apologize for that. We're not really sure what is happening here with GoToWebinar, but we'll just have to deal without seeing our smiling faces, and you can at least see the tool. So Frøydis will be presenting today. She is the product owner of the survey tool. She's been working with It's Learning for, is it 9 years now, Frøydis?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. So she knows what she's talking about. So she'll give you an introduction about the tool and then show you how it works. So you take it away, Frøydis.
Thanks. So good afternoon, at least for most of you, I guess, and welcome to this webinar to get some insights on the new survey tool, which was released last month. I've been working with the development team over the last year or so to create a great new experience for teachers and students creating and answering surveys. So I'm going to start with a bit about the background of this work. I'll quickly go through some of the changes we've made before I move on to a live demonstration, hoping that everything works. I also have some comments about the export formats that I'll talk to you about after the demonstration, and there should be plenty of time for Q&A at the end. Okay, so why? Why did we do this? Why did we do it now? In general, in It's Learning, we constantly strive towards a more consistent and intuitive user experience. With survey, however, the main reason we needed to do something and do it now is that we are trying to remove or upgrade the last bits that use some very old technology in the platform. So this has been an ongoing project in It's Learning for years, and survey was a big chunk of this. Due to other priorities, we had to put it off for some time, but now decided it was time to get it done. In addition, surveys were not really behaving the way you expect of our modern tools. You couldn't share them, they were not very accessible, and the user experience, well, could have been better comparing to modern standards. I know for my own personal sake, things like opening a new window to add a question has led to some mistakes along the way. So, what did we do? Just like the test tool, survey tool has been rewritten from scratch with modern technology. So this is not just a polishing update on the surface. This has been rebuilt from the ground up. And my friends in the engineering department have been really excited to take this to the next level on the technical side of things. And it's been fun to see how easy it can be to build a tool when you start from scratch. So survey is now what we call a standalone application with separate releases, which means that it's independent of the bigger updates of the main It's Learning platform. After the majority of work is now done and roll out, we aim for small and frequent releases whenever we make improvements. So we're not planning any further major changes to this tool now compared to the current state. So what we're doing is mainly minor and technical improvements as we see the usage increase, and we're monitoring the performance, any error messages and feedback from customers to make sure we fix issues as soon as we can. We already fixed a few things that we saw popping up in the back end before we actually got support reports about the same problems. So the new tool is obviously both accessible and mobile friendly, and it has a design that's aligned with the rest of the platform using modern components. So I'll go through some of the main improvements that you'll notice if you have used our own old survey tool. In general, we've improved the workflows when creating a survey, so it's a more good flow when you are actually doing this. The questions are now edited in the same window, and it's quick and easy to do, also if you're only using the keyboard. Once you're done with the survey, you can review all the questions, and should you then find any typos or anything you want to just tweak a bit along the way, there is a shortcut to edit that question and then quickly return to the review where you left off. When creating a multiple choice or matrix question, you will now find a list of predefined answer alternatives that you can use to save time. After you've chosen one, you can edit it, tailor it to whatever needs you have. Students or other participants responding to the survey will see a nice progress bar at the top of the window to tell them how far along they are. In the screenshot here, you're seeing the last question of a survey, and this is a matrix question. For comparison, the exact same question in the old survey is also shown. You'll notice that the radio buttons are bigger, so they're easier to see and to hit with your finger on a touch device. Once the responses start coming in, you can open each individual response for details. Oh, sorry. Ha! Wrong order. All right. But there's also a nice visual summary. This is often the most important part of a survey, getting an overview of the result. For open answer questions, the answers are simply listed. For multiple choice, you'll see a progress bar for each option. And for matrix questions, there's a color pattern to indicate the popularity of options. There are numbers to explain, and this is also read sensibly by screen readers for visually impaired users. As I mentioned, the new survey tool is also shareable in the library to easily be able to reuse it across courses, between teachers, and also between schools if you want. And finally, we have removed all the outdated export options and replaced them with one modern Excel export, where you'll find both questions and answers in the same pattern that we now also use in the test tool. We've had some feedback on that, so I will go a bit more into this after the demonstration. Let me do this full screen. Right, so I'm now logged in as a teacher, and I want to keep working on a survey that my students are going to answer as their homework today. So this survey is to find out what they know about a subject before we start the lesson. That's also always something I often did as a teacher to try to gauge the knowledge level of my students, especially at the beginning of a year before I actually knew them very well. You will notice right away that the survey now looks and behaves like other elements in its learning. You have the sidebar on the right side here with all the settings, and the whole design of it is in line with the rest of the platform. So what I want to do now is to add a few more questions. When I add a question, there are 4 types to choose from: open answer, yes or no, multiple choice, and matrix. You can change the type up until the point where you save the question. So even if you start writing questions and you change your mind, it's easy to change that up until the point where you save. So now I'm going to add a multiple choice. This is one where I want my students to be able to select more than one answer. So we are in chemistry, and we are going to start the topic of water and the properties of water. So I want to know what they know about this. I want them to have more than one. Oops, sorry. Ah, 2 seconds. Something has gone wrong here. There we go. Let's just limit this to 3 at the moment. Right, and I can save that. Next, I'm going to add a matrix question, and this is, for many, the most complicated or complex question type. So a matrix question is what you saw. It's a grid. So you have a list of statements, and then you have the answer alternatives to answer for each of those. So I'm gonna use this. I'm just gonna copy paste the text here to save some time. So again, these predefined answer types, in this case, I couldn't find one that suited exactly what I wanted. So I'm just using a numbered scale. And there are several others here to choose from if you want. And then I have some statements they are going to look at. If I now use save and new, this will skip a few steps. So I get a new question of the same type with the same answer alternatives, or I can change them. So that makes it really quick to create several similar questions, which is often very useful in a survey. The normal save will take you back to the question list, and so will cancel, obviously without actually saving the question in that case. So you see that I now got a new question, it's the same type, I have the same answers, and I can just fill in the rest. But in this case, I'm going to cancel because I'm not going to add one more right now. So going back to the question list, there's a handle here to easily rearrange the questions in the order that I want. And this is also usable by keyboard. So that's something that we've paid a lot of attention to lately, that to make sure that what we create is accessible, it reads sensibly with a screen reader. You can use everything with a keyboard, you don't need a mouse. So in this case, I hit space, and then I can use the arrow keys to move this question up and down. And when I'm satisfied with the placement, I hit space again, and it's in the same in the place I want it in the list. So once you're done, you can review all the questions just to go through the survey without actually submitting an answer. And this gives me the exact same view as respondents, with the exception of this edit option that I've got here. So I can go through everything and make sure it looks the way I want. And I see I have a typo here, so I'm going to edit this and fix it. When I save, I go back to the review. So I'm not taken out of the flow I was in, and it's just going to make it a bit more efficient for me. And at the last question, there's just this exit preview to go back to the survey. And as with all the newer elements types in its learning, as I mentioned, this can be shared in the library. So this way, it can easily be reused by yourself or by others. So to do this, add useful keywords, other information to make it easy to find. You can add the description, and then some keywords. And so on. And then just add it to library where it's shared. I'm not going to do that now, so to avoid this ending up in the production environment. I also wanted to show you this, the summary and results. So I'm going to go into another survey that I also created a lot of answers from, so you can see that. So once the responses start coming in, you can see them in this list. In this case, this is an anonymous survey, so there are no names. And from here, you can open each one to see that particular response in detail. You can see when they submitted it, and if you allow a submission after the deadline, that's going to be stated here in the notes. All these were submitted before the deadline. And you also see that the top one here has not been submitted yet, and I just have a note to tell me when it was started, so I know that. Obviously, if I go back later on and I find one that's not submitted and they started it a month ago, they're really not working on it anymore, and I can delete that. The ones that are ongoing and not submitted yet are not included in results, and they can also be deleted here. So I know this is something that's often asked for in the test tool. So we made sure at least we did it right for survey from the beginning. We're still looking into that for test tool. However, in a survey, it's often more important to get the overview of the results. You're not necessarily interested in the individual answers. So this is found in the summary tab. So for open answer questions, there's one down here somewhere, we just simply list them, as I showed also in the screenshots. Multiple choice and yes and no, there are these progress bars that show you how many responded. And that's also stated in text here, so you can read it if necessary. And we made sure this makes sense if you are visually disabled, you can't see the screen. This is read in a sensible manner by a screen reader. So for the matrix question, there should be one here at the bottom. There's a kind of color depending on the frequency of the response. So the distribution of the color is in 5 steps. So 0 to 20% is white. Then there's 20 to 40, 40 to 60, and so on, getting increasingly darker, but making sure the color contrast to the text is still within acceptable range. So as also for the other question types, you'll see the same information in text and numbers. So that should be clear for anyone to understand. And finally, as mentioned, we removed all the outdated export options. They were very old, some of them not really valid anymore, and replaced them with one modern export. We rewrote it, and we use the same pattern as we have in the test tool, where you have all the information and you can do your own statistics. So one click on this and it's downloaded. So I'm going back to the presentation. For both technical and usability reasons, we have limits to how many items you can create. There is a maximum limit of 100 questions, which should be plenty for most people. And for multiple choice and matrix, the limit is 20 statements and 20 answer alternatives. So the numbers are chosen based on, well, basically common sense. As a user, you soon lose track of your options when you have to scroll a lot to get through all of them. However, after we've now seen people use this tool for the past 3 or 4 weeks, we see that teachers are trying to add more answer alternatives than we permit. We've had a bit of feedback, and we decided we will increase the maximum for answer alternatives for multiple choice to 50. We do recommend to keep the list to a minimum for the sake of the student answering the survey, but there are actually a few good scenarios where more than 20 makes sense. So that's going to increase to 50. We're just waiting for some translations and messages to get in place before we can release it to production. Creating a new tool means we have old stuff lying around. So fortunately, surveys were on a pretty simple format, and we simply migrated everything to the new format. All data is included. And as you've seen, the new tool does not support rich text, so we don't have the full editor for all the answers and stuff. But for migrated surveys, all the content is still included, and it is displayed as expected with some minor exceptions. However, you cannot edit this content because it's not actually supported. So if you edit a question with rich content, that content is lost. Only the text is kept. There are clear warnings about this. There are no permanent changes made until the content until you save. So some exceptions. Embedded content, like a YouTube video, is going to become links. And if someone for some reason used a custom plugin, those were or are available in the full editor to add content, those will not work. We did some research in the old data, and we expect there are very, very few cases of this. And please also note that if you have old links to external surveys, those will no longer work. So to keep using an external survey, you need to share a new link. And I forgot to show you that one. 2 seconds. So if I go back to the survey I had before, there we go. I can make this an external survey. And external surveys, those are always anonymous because those are available outside its learning, and then we won't know who it is. I can save this, and now I have this share button. Clicking that, I get options to copy the actual link to the survey or a QR code that you can paste anywhere for very easy mobile access. So students can just use their camera and go straight to the survey. As I mentioned, for the migrated surveys, you actually need to create that new link and copy it because the old links will no longer work. Right, so export. So I mentioned we removed all the old ones. And this is one area where we are now getting some feedback and a few complaints. And from my own sake, I can only apologize for having underestimated the use of exports. I was comparing to the use in tests where it's actually not used that much. But I now see from the data we have after the first few weeks that it's used a lot more in surveys. So I'm already in the process of following up that and planning work towards a more useful export. There are probably a few quite easy steps we can take to make that a bit better. So first of all, as you saw, we've improved the summary inside the tool itself. So it's much easier to see the results of a survey directly without using the export. From what I'm now reading in the feedback we get, it seems that the old in-tool reports has not been used that much, and some teachers at least are exporting simply because of old habits. So the new in-tool report, easy to read, very nice summary. One specific detail I have had some feedback about is the lack of a ready calculated average response. So for multiple choice questions, you could, if you number the answers from 1 to 5 or whatever, you can average that to get a feeling of where the kind of majority of students are. So that's one thing I'll take with me into discussions with the team moving forward. The actual export format is rather technical, but made to be able to generalize any question and thus make it easy to do statistics on it. So the exported file has 2 tabs. It is a bit small in this screen, I'm sorry, but I hope you can see the main point of it at least. The first one, shown here, has details on all the questions with question number, question type, the actual text, and all the answer alternatives listed. Each answer alternative has an ID that's found in the top row in the header. The second tab is the actual responses. So that has the name, unless it's anonymous, of course, the time of submission, and then the answers for each question. So here, each question is a column. Answers for multiple choice and matrix are not shown directly, but rather translated to the ID, which can be found in the question tab to explain which answer it is. I realize this is a big change for those who actually used the old reports and have based some of their workflows on those formats. As mentioned, we are looking into it, and hopefully we can make some useful improvements to help those who need it. I don't want to rush into another solution just based on assumptions, so I'm going to take some time to investigate. I've already reached out to some of the customers to get it right. So if you have any input, please do share or vote for existing ideas in the ideas portal, which I'm monitoring closely these days. All ideas in the ideas portal are monitored before publishing. So if yours doesn't show up immediately, that's why. It's no need to post twice. We will get to it and it will be published. There's also full documentation for the new survey tool that's already available on our support pages. So feel free to check that out. And there's also a bit of information about the migration for old surveys there, if you want to read more about that. And I'll make sure to keep these pages updated as we make future improvements, in particular now with the exports, I guess. So yeah, and as mentioned, please do share your input on the ideas portal. We are reading it. every now and then. I'm checking quite frequently these days to make sure I get the input on new tools like this. So thanks for listening. And now if there are any questions, I will do my best to answer them.
Thank you, Frøydis. I don't have any questions in the question tab here. So we'll just... Nothing. It seems crystal clear, yeah. But if we leave the question tab open for about 5 minutes, and I can allow people to send in, and but maybe it was just clear enough.
Hopefully.
Can you talk a bit more about the accessibility improvements that have been made? Because I think some of the choices we make when we create something new like this may be not understandable, because people are missing maybe functions that they've used to have.
Yeah, so the kind of very obvious change that is to a large degree based on needs for accessibility is that we've removed the rich text editor. So if you go back 15 years, we had the rich text editor in its learning almost everywhere. And you may have seen that over the at least past 5 to 7 years, we have removed it from a lot of places or made it more hidden or tried to simplify it. And some of that is simply due to accessibility, and in some places in particular. So having a full editor with options for formatting images and more rich content in the question text is not really an issue, because that is read as a block of content where the browser and screen reader is able to what's the word? The technical word is parse, but I can't remember the other word. Kind of digest the full HTML and present it in an understandable manner. However, once you move into the answer section where you have radio buttons, you have checkboxes and so on, this is technically what we call a form. And reading the options in a form, we need to have a much simpler format to be able to make it sensible. And we need to really control the format. We can tell the screen reader to read the alternative text on an image, but then we need to know there's an image. And the same for equations. There are alternative texts to equations and so on. So we need to control it to a much higher degree. And for that reason, we've removed the rich text editor. It's plain text. And you've seen in Test Tool where we've started to now allow you to add images separately. Again, making sure that we keep control of the content, and thus we are able to present it to students and in particular to screen readers in a sensible manner. So that's kind of the big chunk of that. And there are a few technical reasons why we have limited the editor as well, which is why in survey we don't have it anywhere now. That's something we will keep reconsidering as we also get more modern tools in the future. So screen readers, that's one of the things that is affecting the choices we make a lot. We spend time making sure things are operable by keyboard, like I showed you with rearranging the question list. And then keeping more simple things like color contrast, text size, all those things into account, making sure that when you zoom, all the content is rearranged properly so you can still read it and it doesn't go out of screen or is hidden by something. So accessibility is it's an interesting field to work with, and there are a million things to think about. But we're getting better, and we have a really qualified team in its learning to make sure we do this in the correct way.
That was a good answer, Frøydis. We have a question now in the question thread. It says, If I make the same survey multiple times, can I somehow get an overview for the changes or progress in the answers?
Yeah, so you have one survey, and you basically what you want is to have people take the same surveys multiple times and they then see the development of their answers. So currently in a survey, you can only answer it once. Obviously, if you create an external survey which is anonymous, you have no control of who's taking it. So if one person takes it 5 times or not, you can't see the difference. So it's not natively built to make the process work well. In that case, you would have to have separate surveys over time, so you can see the development there.
Thank you, Frøydis. Thanks. So that was an answer to the question, I think. And I've got no more questions for you, so I think we'll just leave it at that. Thank you everyone for attending, and my apologies again for the camera situation. We did dress up for this, so we're a bit disappointed as well. But hopefully this was useful for you, and as Frøydis says, keep sending your suggestions through the ideas portal and look at the support documentation.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Right.